I first saw Brian De Palma's The Untouchables back in the early 90s. I was very young at the time for a film like this, you know, with some brutal baseball bat violence. And it was quite a shocker, but also quite thrilling. I remember being thoroughly engaged with it. I was watching it with my parents. And it was like one of those kind of defining cinema moments where you felt like you'd seen something you'd never seen before. And we watched it a couple of times, a few times back in those days, and it was a bit of a standout. Great film. I saw it again maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, and for whatever reason it didn't hit me in quite the same way, and it took a bit of a dive. It went from being like, well, I guess what would be a 5-star film to a 3-star film. I don't know why. I must have been in a really bad mood, as often happens with me. I watched it again for this review, and I think I'm settling somewhere between those two now. Is it the 5-star masterpiece classic? No, but it's still a damn good film, man. This is such an enjoyable movie. Yeah, gangster film set around Chicago during the Prohibition era. You've got a group of men led by this guy, Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, who's been tasked with bringing down Al Capone. And yeah, it's just, what means will you use? What will you use? The means that are necessary at all costs? Will you step over the line of, you know, like breaking the law in order to bring this guy down who's an absolute scourge on the city? And that's the moral questions, really, the moral dilemmas that are raised within the film. I see this film being a big influence on Nolan for The Dark Knight, you know, not least of which it's shot in Chicago. I feel like a lot of the locations that are used here are also used in The Dark Knight and shot in a very similar kind of vantage point. I can definitely feel a bit of what De Palma is doing here in Nolan's Dark Knight movies. But there's also that angle that Nolan explores in The Dark Knight, which he kind of touched on at the end of Batman Begins, which was that, you know, if you start wearing body armor, they start using armor-piercing rounds, and you know that whole thing about escalation. And again, like I say, I think a lot of that is here. I can see this being a blueprint, a springboard, so to speak, for a lot of what Nolan's exploring in that movie, which obviously is my favourite movie of all time. So props to De Palma there, I guess, for maybe I'm not saying it was, but maybe being an inspiration on Nolan. But that's a lot of what this film is dealing with, is like that idea of escalation. Look, these are bad guys. They really need bringing down, but how far do you go? And the further you go, the further they go, until there's blood on the streets. And more to the point, is it worth it? You know, it's quite key that this film takes place during the Prohibition era, right near the end of the Prohibition era, in fact. In fact, the movie ends with the end of the Prohibition era, and that does cast some doubt on the validity about what these men have done, given that the laws that were being broken that forced them into pursuing these men have all essentially just been repealed. So what was all their work? Was all their work necessary? Or was what was really necessary just a change in the law? You know, I think there's another film that can go into all that stuff, but certainly that's a question that is raised, or a doubt that is posed by the end of the movie. Either way, we've got the good guys, the guys trying to uphold the law, and the bad guys who work for Al Capone. And this film is just, it plays out essentially like a Western. We even have a whole protracted sequence where they're on horseback and they're in a location that looks very akin to something you would see in a Western. So, you know, right there, it's giving you an absolute clear nod and wink that, hey, you know what? This is like the Old West, but set in the 1930s. And that's the way it plays. That's how it feels. Now, originally, Bob Hoskins was supposed to be playing Al Capone. The studio that backed it really didn't want any big names. They tried to persuade De Palma to go for no-name actors. And when you look at when this came out, like Kevin Costner, Andy Garcia, they're all pretty huge now, or certainly have been huge at one point. And yeah, they weren't when this film came out. You look at this now and it's like a star-studded cast. Well, back then it kind of wasn't. The two main stars in it are Sean Connery and Robert De Niro. And Robert De Niro is a supporting player. He plays Al Capone, but every time he's on screen, he gets to chew the scenery. He gets to like really play it up and just remind us that, yeah, that's Robert De Niro. He's acting, and he's great. He's great in it. But as I say, he's only there because Brian De Palma pushed pretty hard for the studio. He threatened to walk at one point, actually, from the studio. He said, look, either we go with De Niro, because he's my choice. He's my choice, the one I want. No offence to Bob Hoskins, but I want De Niro. He said that he'd walk if he didn't get him. And it was a gamble that paid off. He got him. But yeah, I mean, I think it would have been interesting to see Bob Hoskins in this role because he has played that gangstery type before and he's succeeded quite well at it, I think. But certainly Robert De Niro makes that character his own. The core four as well, these four men that come together who play the Untouchables, so to speak, are a very dynamic group. They're all very different from each other, all very separate personalities. And I like that. I like the banter between them. I like the differences in character. I like that Sean Connery's character. He plays this street cop. He's been plucked by Ness because of who he is as a person, the vibe he gets off him, and that instinct kind of pays off. But he's a very hard line, like straight down the line. Look, this is what you need to do if you want to tackle men like Capone. This is the line you've got to step over, and if you're not willing to go there, then I'm out. If you are willing to go there, then we're all in and we're doing this thing and we've got to get on with it. And so I like his attitude towards things. Not necessarily agree with it, like in real life. If I was in that situation, I'd be like, I don't know about this. But for the sake of entertainment, for watching it on film, it makes for a very interesting dynamic. The film has more than its fair share of shocks as well. I remember certain character deaths in it, how they played back when I saw this as, I'm probably around 12 years old when I saw it. And I remember them hitting hard. And it's not just one, there's a couple where you're just like, oh, okay. I didn't expect the first guy to get killed, and then so I certainly didn't expect the second. So it's just like, you can't go into this film thinking certain people are safe just because they're on a particular side or whatever. It doesn't play like that. But that's good. It adds a certain sense of danger, a certain sense of impact that the stakes are real. The stakes are high and they're very real. If you get your hands dirty, if you go looking for trouble, you're going to find it in this world. De Palma shows himself to be a master of tension as well. You look at the Union Station sequence, which has often been talked about, but it is a masterclass in how to drag out the tension, like really like stretch out the tension so that you're on the edge of your seat. It's just this bringing all these pieces together in Union Station where you can see the woman trying to bring the baby up the stairs. You can see Costner, who's clocked her, but he's also waiting for the gangsters to arrive so they can collar them. You've got Andy Garcia's character who's gone down a different route to check that out, and then the men start pouring into the building, people who aren't gangsters but you think they might be, and all this tension starts ramping up. And then it kicks off and it goes into slow-mo as this baby's car is just slowly falling down and this shootout is taking place. And the tension is just ramped up. Now, a lot of it, as often been stated, is De Palma calling back to Battleship Potemkin. A film I've never seen, to be honest. A film I've no interest in seeing, to be honest. It may be a classic. It may be a film that your pretentious grad students at film school really rag on about as if it's the best thing they've ever seen because they've been told it's the best thing they've ever seen from their film tutors. But yeah, I saw a bit of it back in film college. Wasn't that interested. Not my bag. But I accept that, there's definitely... I've seen that particular scene from Potemkin and I can see how Brian De Palma has taken it, used it, but made it his own. And yeah, like I say, it's a masterclass in dragging out tension, and it's comedic to some degree, and it has been parodied in certain films. I can't remember where I saw that parody actually, but that was pretty hilarious. It might have been one of like Hot Shots or something like that. I don't know, one of them kind of movies. But it is a sequence that leaves itself open to attack in that degree, because it's so over the top, because it's so overblown. But that's what this film is. It is an overblown film in every sense of the word. DePalma knows what he's making. That's the thing. Ennio Morricone's score is pretty good in this as well. It somewhat differs to the likes of his scores for Once Upon a Time in America and the Dollars trilogy. There's a lot more kind of modern instrumentation in there, which gives it a bit more of a like jazzy kind of vibe to it that at first I wasn't too sure about. When we get the opening kind of bars of music, I was like, oh, okay, that's Morricone, is it? All right, it doesn't sound like his usual kind of thing. But as the film goes on, as it plays out, you get what kind of film you're watching, and you realise that actually, no, this score suits it just fine. And there's a few moments in it that keep repeating and get stuck in your head. And by the time I got to the end of it, I was walking away thinking, that's a pretty damn good score. It really helps as well, I think, to have a central character such as Elliot Ness, who is a morally upright person. Yes, as I say, he has to cross a few lines, but he knows what he's crossing. He knows that, like, it has an impact on him. This is the thing. It isn't just something he casually breezes by and that's it, whatever. It has implications on him and weighs on him. These are not decisions that he makes lightly. They're well considered, and he's caught between a rock and a hard place a lot of the time. And he has to make a decision. Sometimes it's just the lesser of two evils. But it helps to have a character like that in this kind of movie that I can root for, that I can go along with, that I may not always agree with, but I can understand them and ultimately submit to their judgment, because maybe I couldn't come up with a better solution myself. So I can go along with that. Whereas I look at a film like recently that I reviewed, which was Once Upon a Time in America, where I watched something like that and there's nobody in there that I root for. There's nobody in there that I care about, that who I can look at as a moral example that I could follow in any kind of way. I just, for me, I struggle with those kind of movies. I really do. I find it much easier to hold to a movie or love a movie when it does have at least one, in the case of this movie, 4 characters who I can get on board with in terms of the moral stance that they come from. So, yeah, that's a big deal for me. Story and character, particularly character. I like the characters in this. I can enjoy a lot of the machinations of the villainous characters because I know they're going to get it. I know they're going to get the comeuppance. I know that we've got some heroes that are trying to stop them. So I can enjoy that ride as a result. But if it's just a lot of bad guys doing bad things for no morally great purpose, I take no enjoyment from that. And that's just me. But there you go. Yeah, The Untouchables. Really phenomenal film. Just not a 5-star classic, but just a damn good, enjoyable period piece with I didn't even touch on like the production design and the period detail and all that, but again, it's phenomenal. As with Once Upon a Time in America, it's just I love that era. I love the cars. I love the look and the feel, the tone of that era. It may be romanticized. It may be quite nostalgic infused because we weren't there. We can't really get a true sense of what it was like. We just have the movies to go off. But what we get in movies like this, like Untouchables, I love that era. Even though it's a very, if you go off the movies, it's a very dangerous era to live in. But there you go. That's my thoughts on The Untouchables. But what about you? Do you like this film? How do you rate it alongside De Palma's other gangster movies, Scarface and Carlito's Way? Let me know of the 3 which you think is the best. Leave your thoughts on the film down in the comment section below. Thank you for watching this review, and until next time, crack in.